In a world filled with so much serene beauty and wonder as far as the eye can see, a growing darkness began to engulf all walks of life into despair and destruction. Until one fateful day, he appeared. Once a simple college student who had his life whisked away from him, a delicious beacon of hope had been dipped into this world in order to combat evil for the sake of the residents who dwelled within it. Dragons, goblins, and the one true evil aren't dealing with an average hero. Oh no, they are about to become the stepping stones to the legend of Nugget Hero.
I swear to God, if they tease Ronald McDonald at the end of this season, I'm gonna f***ing lose it!
Isekai, Webster's dictionary defines as a weeb fantasy.
Yep, it's right here.
Let's face it, my fellow weebs, there have been at least 100 times you thought about what it would be like to live out the rest of your life in the glorious realm of anime. Probably not in one as dangerous as Attack on Titan, unless you're a masochist, in which case, enjoy the vor. But I'm sure for a lot of us, it would be somewhere you can live out your wildest dreams of being a legendary hero making a difference in the world. And what better area of anime to achieve that in than the realm of fantasy? Oh baby, getting to spend the rest of your life slaying demons while being beloved by all. Now that's a dream come true kind of scenario that us nerds have fantasized about while studying for that next big test, or while putting on our work uniforms for a day that's not going to be quite as sizzling. And thanks to fellow dreamers out there, we've gotten access to all sorts of media created over the years, giving us a taste of being able to heroically swing a blade for good. But there are some creative minds out there who have posed the question of, what if someone like me was inside these kind of mystical worlds? And with that, dun-dun-dun-dun, Isekai was born.
One of the most prominent genres of anime over the years is the Isekai genre. A specific category of fantasy with one person from one world, most likely Earth, is transported to another with a sword in hand. And seeing how every brand new anime season, there's usually like 3 or 4 new isekai shows popping up every anime season, it's a genre that's definitely here to stay.
But why wouldn't it be? It's clear from the amount of isekai series getting animated these days that the popularity behind it has only continued to grow over the years as anime has become more normalized in this day and age. Which I, for one, take that as a great thing because more anime, yes please and thank you. But what exactly is it about these stories that us fans find so damn appealing that we flock to them in a heartbeat and can barely contain our excitement at the idea of one of us being in these situations? While the answers are fairly obvious, I want to discuss my own thoughts about the genre I adore so much. So please join me this chilly holiday season as we look at the wonderful world of Isekai. A person who isn't really familiar with the concept of being isekai probably would ask something along the lines of, why would anyone willingly leave everything and everyone they know behind for some strange fantasy world?
Are you serious right now? This world sucks!
Overly simplified reason, admittedly, but a lot of the characters diving straight into these new and exciting worlds are people who aren't super in touch with the real world to begin with. So the idea of starting all over isn't that big of a toll on them in comparison to others who still have those positive connections tied to them that would be hard to let go. However, a lot of the time, it's not really the protagonist's choice to take their first step onto that grand adventure, as usually there's some guiding force from the new world that drags them in. But that's just one of the many ways to be sent into an isekai story. One lonely night, you could be logged into your favorite MMO, and all of a sudden, BAM! You're a real undead overlord who could wipe out the entire new world. Or you can be super lucky enough to be reading the right mysterious tome, like how the tale of Shield Hero began, which I'm currently on day 4 trying to replicate myself. But the biggest and most popular one is the literal nail in the coffin with death being used as a means of reincarnation to be transported to another world. How exciting! Regardless of the circumstances of them getting there, these are people who were longing for something new and exciting to fill the empty voids in their lives. And taking a permanent vacation by being isekai'd would undoubtedly satisfy that longing, whether it be for better or for worse. Which is something most of us to some degree can relate to when we go out and travel ourselves. You know, back before the world was on fire.
So the next time someone tells you off by saying go to hell, you should totally just be like, hey, thanks man, I've been totally meaning to get isekai'd lately. Which, speaking of, here I go! I lived.
I mean, can you blame me for trying to be sent to another world? Think about all the fantasy tropes you could experience. Like, depending on the world, you can become an adventurer at a guild going on quests of a lifetime, spending your free time learning to channel bombastic kinds of spells, or even just spend your free time interacting with wondrous creatures looking straight out of those fantasy JRPGs you always played when growing up as a kid. Plus, let's not forget that like moths drawn to a flame, an isekai protagonist seems to attract a whole harem of beautiful people wanting to be by their side. The absolute #1 weeb dream. Yeah, I'm still single, why'd you ask? Granted, this kind of magnetism doesn't always mean the best things if you're like Kazuma from Konosuba, even though as a fellow masochist, I think darkness is a wonderful party member. Or it can mean some really unfortunate events like in Ray Zero when it comes to Subaru's new life. Even though being murdered by Rem is a goddamn blessing I'd be grateful for. I think I got off track a little bit. Think about how amazing it would be to actually live out your remaining days as one of the heroes you've admired so much from your favorite stories. Placing yourself in a fantasy world opens up the door for you to learn so many skills that are inconceivable in reality. Of course, there's the chance learning to wield such power or fully utilize spells might not come naturally to you. But just like any real-world skill, practice means everything. And putting that much work into something mystical like this could spark that sense of heroism you didn't know you wished for. Or spark villainy if that's your true provocative. Hell, some isekai protagonists are just straight up gifted with special abilities and weaponry as soon as they've stepped foot into their new role in the realm of fantasy. Seriously, being isekai means you've got it made. In theory. In fact, I dare say that depending on the physical form you take when being reincarnated into another world will determine how blessed you really feel. As the isekai genre loves to play with the idea of human beings given seemingly random forms out of sheer luck before their new lives have even started.
While there's no doubt that we have quite the overabundance of isekai anime, it pales in comparison to the rising boom the genre had in the light novel community, especially with all the non-humanoid centered stories.
Seriously, you throw a rock in the Weeb section of Barnes & Noble, chances it'll end up in another world. The whole concept of reincarnation is the idea of being reborn into a brand new life after death. And when you mix in a fantasy world element, that doesn't automatically mean you're just limited to becoming another human being. A fantastic example of this comes from the light novel series So I'm a Spider, So What? Where not only the main character gets reincarnated as a monster spider, but her entire classroom from Japan have also been reborn as well into different roles, such as royalty, genders, and obviously species. Meaning it really does come down to the luck of the draw of what you're gonna get. Also, side note, if you love isekai stories that really embrace RPG game tactics, you gotta give this series a read. It's just so freaking good, and it's getting an anime adaptation soon. Unraveling from the spider talk, the idea of non-human protagonists adds a whole new level to the fantasy genre that pushes the creativity up to an 11. That's one more than 10. Like, watching a former Japanese businessman run around in a fantasy world as a magical slime cutting loose with so much power is silly sounding, yet really entertaining to see. But I'll admit, there are some ludicrous sounding reincarnations out there, like a vending machine? The could I get Doritos from him? Oh my lord, I have so many questions about this one in particular, but you know what? I'm not gonna read it because I think the mystery of why and how he's a vending machine is just really funny to me. But But the infinite possibilities of reincarnation from creatures to non-living objects makes the isekai genre even more vast than just the box standard fantasy stories we've seen time and time again, making the whole isekai concept just even more great than it already was. Let me tell you, I'll choose a hitchhiker transforming into a polar bear over Game of Thrones any day of the week, thank you very much.
When telling a fantasy story, you have to go into a lot of detail about how this new world we are seeing is far from ordinary. So using the trope of a main character who's just an average Joe from real-world Earth helps accentuate just how exceptional and foreign the whole fantasy genre is. So why haven't I been isekai yet?
My favorite isekai series, Ray Zero Starting Life in Another World, is just one of the many examples that shows this, as its main character in a blink of an eye finds himself in the middle of a huge bustling city filled with demi-humans, gorgeous magic users, and Apple merchant save points, a classic fantasy environment. However, this poor lad can't read any of the language, let alone use pocket change from his homeworld, so he has no choice but to rely on the kindness of others and his own wit to learn more about this fantasy world, which adds a level of relatability for us, the viewer, also learning about the world by following along with this poor guy. While the fresh eyes approach is definitely a great way of setting up a brand new world, just having an outsider with different customs from where they're from adds a whole new level of hilarity and creativity to the fantasy trope, when you get to include the mystic wonders of a cell phone. No, I'm not talking about that series because I haven't watched it yet, I'm sorry. Sure, these protagonists may be learning basic knowledge like how to read and write in this world, but their teacher doesn't know what a toaster is, so it's a fair playing field. Keeping that train of thought, having the complete opposite is also pretty damn entertaining, with reverse isekais placing otherworldly beings into our plain old Earth. After all, we get powerful, demonic-like characters completely ignorant of mankind's superior advancements, like operating a car or proper banking. Yeah, a world full of magic doesn't hold a candle to our society running off minimum wage, grossly inflated insurance, and crippling debt. Please get me out of here, Satan! I'm fine. No, it's fine. I can keep going. Nah, just being able to watch and read about these imaginative situations play out with relatable characters is enough to keep us weeps smiling for decades. After all, a lot of the humor found in isekai scenarios comes from that connection we have with the character's understanding when trying to process everything with a real-world brain. Asking the self-aware questions of, did they just get isekai'd inside this isekai? Like the fellow nerds they are.
Sure, any fantasy plot could set up an exceptionally gifted hero always fighting for the sake of good, but how many of those talented characters do you feel truly represents us? That we could put ourselves in the shoes of any kind of hero character like a chicken nugget?
While not every protagonist in an isekai plot is exactly the same kind of person, even though admittedly the shut-in neat backstory is seen a lot, they're usually portrayed in such a normal light that it's so easy for anyone enjoying the story could actually envision themselves in that exact scenario of playing Galgun with gorgeous flugels. Admittedly, watching someone struggle to master or even just grasp the level of common sense needed in the world of fantasy isn't entirely unique to the isekai genre, but it's one of the only ones that truly isolates the concept of our reality being the unnatural element being implemented into these stories, making the hard work getting done from these protagonists extremely satisfying when it's thanks to the literal out-of-this-world kind of thinking being put up against the magical barriers standing in their way. But something that I feel gets often overlooked from isekai stories is that having a mostly normal person getting placed suddenly into a "our world is at stake" kind of situation adds a certain level of humanizing character development that we don't see regularly in heroic fantasy tales. These neat-like protagonists didn't ask for the task or if at all the gifts they were bestowed with. And furthermore, they might even feel burdened by the sheer weight of responsibility that now rests on their shoulders, to the point it's almost crippling compared to what they had in their original world. On a more positive note though, that also leads into huge stepping stones of emotional growth for these characters to achieve when they have their newfound allies and companions remind them of how they're not alone on this journey. And all of their actions, whether it was a small act of kindness done on a whim, or trying to be brave in the face of danger lying dead ahead for someone else's sake, makes a huge difference to all the people who never would have met them if fate hadn't intervened and brought them there, showcasing the importance of their destiny being intertwined in these new worlds. Now, I know I've talked a lot at this point about how cool it is seeing real-world people being placed into new, potentially life-threatening situations. Especially when you're younger watching the OG Isekai Digimon, when you're seeing kids almost get pincered to death from a giant bug monster and thinking, that could be me! But I haven't really explained what I truly love most from the genre that I feel most fans of even just normal fantasy will agree they connect to the most. And that comes from the idea of escapism. You've heard of it, and we've all done it. Especially when stuck in shitty situations like that one class where you just have to daydream being literally anywhere else to make it through the day. While it's definitely a fantasy that may have started out as simple pipe dreams and media to spend our evenings with, over the years, all sorts of fictional media has slowly been bleeding into actual reality, as VR games and simulations have been attempting to bridge that gap of being mentally transported to a brand new world. And honestly, I don't think it's quite that far-fetched to believe in the near future we'll have SAO level kind of tech to fully immerse all of our senses into exciting game-like worlds, with how much our society keeps advancing. Even though the label of Isekai is slapped onto a genre of Weeb media, in actuality it also applies to that creative drive inside all of us seeking out unexplored regions and concepts in search of new and exciting stimuli. So in a way, since the dawn of time, us human beings have been isekaiing ourselves all along.
That's right, all you anime haters out there. Deep down, you've been weebs the whole time. What do you gotta say now? Huh? So they had a lot to say. They took my shoes.
Alright, let's face it, living in the real world can be really, really tough sometimes. To the point you feel like you've just been dealt an extremely unjust hand in life. But it's all the motivations we find that pushes us forward towards all of our hopes and dreams. And believe it or not, I truly think that experiencing an isekai plot can be a motivator that gives you a brand new outlook on your own future. Regardless of who you are, it's no big secret that daydreaming about yourself living an entirely new life will have crossed your mind here and there. One where you're free from the shackles of real-world responsibilities that, let's be honest, almost all of us would jump headfirst at the opportunity of a fresh start to reinvent themselves in a world where they can make all of their dreams come true. And in a way, reading or watching isekai stories of average characters getting those miraculous chances to work on themselves in a new, happier light, to me, is a great reminder that we all have the power to change our own destiny. And with that, our own little worlds that we live in. Hard work and self-improvement is never easy, but it's worth it for all the dreams we can accomplish.
As always, guys, thank you so very much for sticking with this isekai topic video all the way to the end. I'm all jazzed up, I just like to move around. And of course, you know by now I'm a huge nerd. It's part of my branding, for crying out loud. So naturally, I was so excited to share my thoughts about a genre that literally makes weeb dreams come true. And hopefully finally earn my ticket to be isekai'd. Maybe it'll happen tonight.
If you enjoyed the video, leaving a thumbs up below would be a huge way to show your support for the channel. And if you want to stay up to date for any other nerdy concepts I may talk about, hitting that subscribe button would be the best way to make sure you don't miss out on the next video. Also, you can follow me on my Instagram and Twitter for potential behind-the-scenes stuff about my content, which does include a 151 sub goal for a certain Poke video topic I'd like to discuss.
Now if you'll excuse me, before I try to get transported out of this world again, I gotta finish the season finale of Nugget Hero. Wow! They changed it completely from the light novel!